Welcome to Holistic Living Texas Edition, your guide to navigating real estate mindfulness and empowering your dreams. I'm Jill.
And I'm Lisa.
And we're your Austin, Texas holistic real estate agents dedicated to helping you make informed decisions.
After 2 years of reflection during the pandemic, we've witnessed a surge in passionate dream chasing and an urgency to create unique living spaces to serve these dreams.
We're seeing a whole new set of market players emerging in this post-pandemic reality, demanding a fresh approach to home planning. We've always promised to provide you with long-term real estate perspectives, and now, as this market undergoes profound changes, we want to ensure you have all the facts so your decisions are rooted in knowledge.
So join us as we explore this unique moment in history together.
Hello, real estate dream chasers. It's good to be with you today, and we're looking forward to our discussion. But first, Lisa, how was the scene this weekend out in the field? What are you seeing?
Well, we had more activity this weekend. We noticed that clients are looking more. Open houses are doing good. We've seen, I think because of the festivals and other events that have been happening, we've got clients with families coming in who are visiting, who are wanting to explore ideas about home ownership out here in Austin. So yeah, we're seeing some good activity.
Yeah, I actually had some clients that missed out on a house. There was a multiple offer that I was a part of. And then I had some clients that a home that had been sitting for 70 plus days, they lowered the price, and that's when all the offers came in. So I'm seeing more client calls, more requests for discussions, and our daydream home transition consultations. So yeah, I am seeing a pickup for sure, which I know led to us reaching out to Mark. And today we're heading into part 2 of our discussion with our lender, our loan specialist, Mark Abernathy. For those of you who tuned into our Holistic Living podcast last session, we were visiting with Senior Loan Officer and Branch Manager of Capstar Lending, Mark Abernathy. And we're going to continue that conversation today and that discussion that we've been having about, you know, the change that we're seeing in the lending landscape right now and the markets. So I want to bring back in today, introduce you again to Mark Abernathy. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
I know we were already having our beginning of the week Monday check-in with you. Can you catch up our clients and our listeners to some of the news that you were sharing with us about, you know, like what's the lending scene looking like this week?
Well, this week we've seen a pickup as well. We actually had more pre-qualifications than we've seen in over a month this week, where people getting ready to get qualified, get started, and lots of interest. And from our last podcast, it picked up a lot since then. And we really saw this week is people just really exploring buying a home, getting their, I call their ducks in a row to get out and go search for homes. And we had I want to say we had about 6 or 7 consultations this week, which is a pretty good number for an October timeframe.
Yeah, that's a big switch. Although Lisa and I often talk about how, at least in the Austin, Texas market, that Halloween through New Year's is a second hot season in the Austin area. And we're already seeing our phones pick up and email messages with the very creativity and curiosity that we typically see this time of year. Because beyond the interest rates, what scene has changed for us here in Austin? The weather. It's now like open up the windows and people feel like they can get out and they're enjoying festivals I feel like once things cool off in Austin, people like have this ability to...
Well, you actually want to go outside. You actually want to get in the car and do things. The car's not 130 degrees anymore when you step in.
Yeah. And I know Lisa and I are having another one of our creativity fair / open houses at one of our listings this weekend. And people are excited to get out and explore homes and envision what their future dream house might be. So now everyone's asking us about the interest rates, Mark. So just let's go ahead and update us on what they're looking like right now.
Well, so this week in interest rates, it was a little rough. We are a little higher this week. I would put us in the high 7s instead of the low 7s, but we're still in that range that we could go back down again. A lot of it's going to depend on the inflation data, which comes out And to kind of tell our listeners what that means is that each week the government posts different readings on how inflation reads in our country. And that could be a employment report, a price index, just different things the government reports. And those different reports influence the direction of our interest rates. And as the Fed is their goal to keep our inflation lower, so we all pay less for goods and services. As they get that in check, we'll start seeing rates, level off and come back down again. That's why I feel like right now is a great time to get approved, get ready to buy, because as rates level off, we're going to have more and more buyers looking at homes, and it's going to be more competitive really out there.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a little bit of a pickup right now is because, one, people are wondering, are the rates going to rise? And so they're wanting to look in and hopefully get something before rates do go up. So they get that lower interest rate before it rises. And then two, because of the activity, they know when the rates go down, there are going to be more buyers. At least that's what we've been educating our clients on, is that there will be more buyers and more competition.
Absolutely. Now, Mark, I know you've been in the industry a lot longer than me. This January, it'll be 19 years in the real estate industry, but you've had the opportunity to be serving our Central Texas region for 32 years.
32 years.
And love sharing. Mark, partially paid his way through college, the University of Texas at Austin, by being a real estate agent, which I think is super creative. I love sharing that story. But I continue to be curious and fascinated with when we do buyer consultations and counseling our clients through the loan application process, how tripped up buyers get with, now, how do interest rate locks happen? And, when they initially visit with you, an interest rate that might be quoted might not be the interest rate that is, the interest rate that gets locked in. How do you help clients understand that process?
So when we meet with our customers, we go over how the process works. So an interest rate follows a property. And so what that means is when you find a property and the seller agrees to your offer, you are allowed to lock in the interest rate. And it's mainly because in order to lock an interest rate and hold that money, there has to be a house attached to it. And so when I consult people, we kind of look at the near future, what we think rates will do and what have you. But I use the example, it's kind of like buying a stock. Stocks change daily. They go up and down, and they based on market conditions, just like interest rates. And so when you first talk to me, I'll give you the range of what they are today. And then I generally will stay in touch with all my customers every 2-3 weeks and give them an update what rates are doing, what the market's doing as they look for homes. And the real reason for that is I want people to always kind of have a grasp of what's happening on the market. So they kind of are always aware, okay, what's this week, and Mark's going to check in again in a couple weeks and let us know. But, the main thing to know is that, number one of all things is that rates are going to move up and down daily, what have you. The main thing right now that, we've been telling our customers is really just you want to find the right house. The rate that I'm most likely going to give you at this point is the rate that I'll probably be refinancing you over the next couple of years. And so this is not a rate you're going to keep forever by any means.
Yeah, I feel like consistently Lisa and I find our clients kind of getting tripped up a little bit with sort of specificity of numbers and feeling like they have a hard time sort of working outside of a definition of an interest rate above X range or below. Is there any advice or counsel that you could give potential home buyers, a new framework, an idea to think through how to approach that planning?
Yeah, so what we try to do is when we first talk to them is go over, kind of work into their budget. And really the goal in the budget is to kind of get a good price range that they're comfortable with when they look at homes. And we base that on the current rates, and then generally we'll look at them as though the rates have risen. And so I generally, when I quote people up front, I actually will add a quarter to maybe even 0.5% on the rate just to have them on the higher side as they start looking for homes. It's always nice for me as a lender to be able to tell people later, by the way, that house that you looked at that we figured you at 7.5, we can now get you 7. And now their payment's lower and they're much happier than they were if I did it the opposite way and tried to put a low rate on them and then it was higher when they found the house. Now we can't control that completely, but generally we get it pretty close. And in theory, rates don't move a whole lot most years. This year's been more volatile than most because of the Fed's action trying to lower our inflation. And that's good. We want inflation lower. That's a good thing for all of us, buying groceries to what have you.
Yeah. I know One of the things that we've been talking about a lot, Lisa and I, not only with our clients, but, in our podcast here and on our website and in our blog, is the creativity that we are seeing the consumers sort of unleash from their 2 years of post-pandemic daydreaming. And that just continues to really surprise and excite me in terms of how people are envisioning how they want to live and the ideas that are coming out. I mean, honestly, every week we are being introduced to a new client that's has a new story or a new narrative that they want to figure out a way to make happen, whether it's intentional community living, 2 families, 1 house, or people that want to find project space. People want space. So I feel like this year, 2023, has been all about Lisa and I sort of solving creative problems for helping people find the space that they want to live or work or combine their projects with their family or their multifamily living. Can you talk a little bit more? I know we started talking about it a little bit last week of, the process that two individuals might go through to purchase a home together. Maybe they're not, traditional family relation. Maybe they're two friends or two neighbors or, school buddies. How might a home purchaser, a non-traditional home purchaser, approach the home loan process?
Well, that's a great question. And this week, we actually had some news that is pretty fantastic for us. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the government agencies that kind of oversee home loans, introduced a new program that will be live in about 3 weeks. And it allows, people who buy homes 2 to 4 families. So you could buy a duplex up to a fourplex with just a 5% down payment. And so if you do a math on that and you go, gosh, what if you had 4 families want to live in a fourplex? You could put that together and their down payments are only 1.25% to buy that home. So if you start running numbers on that, it's very affordable to get into a house under that new program. And so everyone knows, our listeners know, that program changed to where on some of those programs, it was as much as 20% down instead of 5% down. So that is a big step in the direction of where we're kind of headed, helping families and live in a non-traditional sense to where you can get more for your money on a home and not have the big upfront costs that you would have normally to get into a mortgage.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want the listeners to understand that right now, I want you to grasp the moment that real estate agents are witnessing, because I feel like we are literally on the front lines of seeing a generational shift in how people approach homeownership or wealth building. And with this slight downturn in the market, you hear people talk all the time about, it's the downturn that you want to take advantage of, start investing more, get in. Lisa and I are witnessing people take advantage of this wonderful space in the market to use their wealth building in a really unique and profound way. We're seeing people that are wanting to do philanthropic work and help families or foster kids or, people that are displaced that find themselves in our community, escaping war or family violence, a variety of things. People are creatively thinking about their home ownership in a new way. And I don't mean to keep repeating it, but, Lisa and I are all about finding solutions to these creative ideas that people come to us about.
Yeah.
So are there any other products that you're seeing people explore in terms of FHA versus conventional loans versus USA?
You can use all the above, Jill. That's a great question. So FHA also has a program. That's the Federal Housing Administration program, and it's similar to conventional's program, but it's been around a lot longer. And they'll do a down payment as low as 3.5% down. The only difference on that one is you have to all be going to live in the property on FHAs. So if several families want to move in together, they require you all to live there. Whereas conventional's program, you could actually have someone help you who's not going to live there. And so they can be what's called a non-occupant co-borrower. It just opens up more options. And to give an example, let's say that you have a 18, 19-year-old who wants to buy their first home and they're going to be going to college in, say, San Marcos, go to Texas State. The parent or a loved one could buy that home with them. and take advantage of these low down payment programs to get them into a house and build credit and equity in a home at a much younger age. And it's a really nice program in that situation. And if you look at it from that, you could use either of these programs now, and which is a huge benefit. And the conventional program is really beneficial with just a 5% down payment. You know, not to get too technical with our listeners on this, but in the long run, you can drop what's called mortgage insurance, which we can get into at another time. But it just benefits you that your payment will drop over time, and you really come out in a really nice position to, be able to gain that young wealth at a young age. And just another example of how you can do that.
So here's a question I have for you, Mark, on that same topic. Looking at it in a different way, what we typically have seen, I know I did it with my child when they were going to college, is you would buy a property, let your child live in it, and maybe get a roommate, help pay for those mortgage payments while they're living there, and then when they leave, you sell it or whatever. But what if they bought a multi-unit property, and instead of having a roommate, they live in the next unit, they pay the rent, and you have the other units available as well to not only pay the mortgage for that property, but maybe make some money?
You can, under what we just talked about, that totally works.
That would work.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, it definitely works.
And we're like, one of the things that we're seeing and helping guide people through right now is this intentional co-op, intentional community movement of living, where friends or, over the pandemic, there were pods, like people had school, several kids that were same age, and they created pods. Well, some of these pods, these kids are growing up, and they're still sort of deeply connected and growing and supporting each other. And now that pod is going out and wanting to buy maybe a fourplex or a triplex, or look for project space. Some of these pods have shifted into homeschool land, and so they're wanting to identify a piece of property. Lisa and I are working with a family that are trying to find a little bit of land, not too much acreage, but between 5 and 10 acres, so that they could have some project space to be able to be out in nature, but they could bring some teachers in and have some, whether you call them tiny houses or some movable structures to be able to have classroom. But then the families that are supporting this pod also have project space that they can come out to, look at the stars on the weekend, go hunting or fishing. So, like this community or co-op living is becoming a greater interest, and, there's more opportunities and systems that are emerging from this. Like, we've got
possibilities are endless. You could create all kinds of scenarios to fit your needs.
Yeah, and these people are first. Hannah, who is living in intentional community living right now, one of our holistic team members, she's got a whole counseling question and process to help people, guide people through determining if something like this really could or would work for you, or if it's within your risk or comfort level. And then we've got attorneys that are helping to draft agreements afterwards, so everyone knows ownership. We also have title people that are helping to answer questions about ownership and deeds. So we've got a lot of different systems that are rolling out from this really unique way of living or investing.
It's fantastic. I'll give an example. I had a customer who bought right outside of Austin near the Elgin area, and they were able to buy, was just a home on the property, and then they were able to basically co-op the property with different structures, from tiny homes to container buildings, to where there's 6 to 8 families now living there, and they're able to garden and I'll call, grow their own crops per se, and live off the land. And so it enables them all to have a piece of ownership and, like we said, see the stars and what have you. But in that case, share the wealth of the land that they can all use together. And it's obviously something they had to put a legal agreement, who owns what and how they did it, but they were able to do that. And it was really fascinating to me watch it, because it was almost like the old, I went to the University of Texas, we mentioned earlier, and there were different co-op houses you could live in, and you shared groceries, and somebody cooked one night and what have you. And this is just taking this to the next level, doing that exact same thing. And it really is nice, because it's giving people other alternatives to the traditional, I'm going to live in a neighborhood home, there's other ways to buy a home. You don't have to think inside the box all the time. There's lots of great outside the box options, and that being one of them.
Yeah, I'm even working with a nonprofit right now that's wanting to identify some space so that some of their staff members can live on property and they still have an asset that might grow as an investment to utilize for some of their other programming. So I'm just fascinated by this level of creativity that
Mm-hmm.
the calls and the questions that we're getting. But ultimately, like people still are getting tripped up with not reaching out to experts to explore things first. And of course, here we are, we're the experts, we want to be in conversation with people, but I don't think people are taking time to recognize that they could be, really examining and researching this a little bit more, and they're daydreaming without the current information, facts, and knowledge.
So true. To give another example to our audience is that I have another customer who found just a couple of acres, and they're going to build what's called a barn dominium on the property. And it's kind of a barn slash home to live in, and they're quite nice and very inexpensive. So, as far as to build one and to set that up, and that's definitely an option for people to, have a country living on a little cheaper budget. So do know that's out there as well. And they're quite nice. If you Google barn dominium and look at them, they're very beautiful built metal buildings, and they're structurally sound and wind resistant, and you can make them a home. They're really nice.
Are there any lending, restrictions or issues that might arise if someone is getting a loan to build? Like, is there anything that a buyer might need to be aware of in terms of, oh, we're getting this land and we're going to build a barn dominium?
Depends on where you build it. The closer to the cities, there's more permitting required. The farther you get out, there's less. It just depends really where you're going to do this. I know I had a customer who built west of here, closer to a little town called Llano, and there's really not any, rules at all. You just go build your house, and it's your house. But as you get closer to Spicewood, which is also west, they have more rules in place of what you have to do to meet codes and what have you. So there's nothing wrong with codes, and there's nothing wrong with not having. Well, there is stuff. I won't say there's nothing wrong with codes, but long story short, it's a little easier to build. The farther you go out, there's less restrictions to get it built.
Yeah, I was in the Austin Monitor, which is a local newspaper or news organization. They held a real estate panel yesterday, and it was for a lot of developers. So we're in residential real estate, but it's always interesting to be in a room full of builders and developers. But there was a panel that was sharing new Senate bills and new legislation that is helping to ease some of the constraints that are in Austin in terms of our zoning and permitting process. And there was discussion about, remember all the Senate bills right now, but one that was adjusting sort of the ETJs and developers who are wanting to, build or grow new projects in the Austin areas, the extended jurisdiction territories, a process that would allow them to potentially get that ETJ released from that commitment and ease up some opportunities. And I was consistently hearing in the room that these developers, I think some of it was mentioned on the news, not yesterday's panel, but that there were some new condo complexes that were in development, but with a downturn in the market, like some of them had to, you know, put the stops on some of their future plans. But I think this slowdown is creating new conversations around issues that are arising from this downturn that I think are creating more, as you said it, Lisa, opportunities for people.
Yeah.
Well, I just think there's a lot of I've been enjoying sort of the new ways that people are thinking about using the land.
I think it's exciting. I think it's exciting to see the creativity that's coming from what we've been through and how it's displaying in our field, because we haven't seen this kind of creativity. I don't think I've seen it since I started 10 years ago.
Absolutely. And I know in the last podcast, I was talking about the fact that, a lot of the way that we live is, like more than 100-year-old marketing story that launched in the 1920s and 30s with the federal Better Homes housing initiative. And we are still living in this idea that one family one family has got to go buy that quarter of an acre starter home and stay in that and then keep building up and up and up. And I just think that if we could just shift away from that idea, or at least recognize that we're still living with an old story of how we should live in communities and that we don't have to live that way anymore. And once I started, thankfully our clients were introducing us and asking us these questions. But once I started shifting my lens to, oh my gosh, maybe one family doesn't have to come up with the whole amount. What if two families come together? If they have shared ideals, vision of where they want to go, and they're able to, as Hannah has we've been developing our holistic consult introduction to this intentional living program, helping people guide them through with these questions of, is this right for you? Could you live with another family for, 3 or 4 years? Is that something that works within your comfort zone? And if it does, gosh, the potential that could arise from that, if two families could build wealth where they wouldn't have ever been able to step into that. Oh, the places we could go, Dr. Seuss, I think that's what's generating, I wish you guys could see me. I'm kind of going into my Martha Graham modern dance hand gestures here, my Italian dance hand gestures, but I really am excited by this because it's creating opportunity that hasn't been there in decades. So I'm going to ask you guys, the listeners, what ideas are generating within you that often lead you to a place of, if I only had a space, if I only had a backyard, if I only had a few acres, if I only had, $10,000 to put down on a house. If you find yourself having those types of daydream questions and curiosities, I want to encourage you to take off that single family marketed 100-year-old old school lens that we have had on top of us and get with a holistic agent like Lisa and I and some of our team members that we work with, like Mark and his team over at Capstar Lending and our title people, because we are seeing truly, we are on the front fields, the ground of witnessing this sea change of intentional and new living. And, maybe we could help walk you through a different way of approaching this. Mark, any last words on how to approach this market or how to daydream out thoughts about budget or some questions that you often get that you wish that you could inspire people to think differently about the lending process? Because
yes.
people are afraid to talk to you.
I know. And
you're so scary.
They need to realize that my job is to solve their problems, you don't ever talk to me and I don't have a solution. I always have a way to make it work. And I tell people this, always know that I had the last week, and after I talked to him, he said, I'm so upset I didn't call you sooner. You answered all my questions, and I've been not sleeping for the last month, just wanting to ask basics of how to buy a home. And you kind of summed it up in a 15-minute call. And I can do that with anybody on how to make it work. And there's always a solution to get anyone into a home. I mean, the government rules and regulations are simple in that. And I'll give one more example to everyone, but I had many customers recently and I'll use the Reese's peanut butter cup commercial where the peanut butter hits the chocolate. So I have customers who have money but don't have a job, and I have customers who have a job but they don't have money. And so you can take the down payment person and combine them with the salaried person and buy a nice home together. And what it does is you don't have to set a rule who has more or less. It just enables you to get into a home, whereas on their own they may not be able to get into a home. And so I have a nice lady right now I'm talking to, and she has plenty of down payment funds, but she's not working right now. And she and her friend, they called me this morning actually. Her friend has a great job with the state of Texas, so they're going to combine together to buy a home together.
That's awesome.
This is
exactly right what we're talking about.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be just starter home or home.
Yeah.
Lisa and I are working with another daydream chase that we're having a blast on. It's two people that, we've all had the dream of having the lake house, Oh, someday wouldn't it be nice? We get on Zillow and we start like scrolling through and we start imagining a vacation home. So I'm seeing some people that are combining forces, these resources and tools like you're talking about, to accomplish a midlife or a long-term dream that they've had of living on water or having a space that they could go to on a regular basis. And what they do is they just split weekends. Sometimes they're there, like some of their families, as they've been unleashing this, they're there all at the same time. So this strategy can be unleashed at the first home level, at the move up level, at the vacation home level, at the project commercial level, at the nonprofit level. I mean,
at the retirement level.
Yeah. Especially, we didn't even bring up I know a lot of folks in the Travis County, Austin area received a mailer this week about some of the zoning and permitting changes that are happening. We may be in the coming months be seeing greater opportunities to have tiny homes in backyards, little studio apartments. We're also still working through the developing on a smaller lot shift that occurred. We have a sitting mayor right now that only has 2 terms and is really focused on finding creative ways to see big results. So he is in action mode. Whether you agree, I'm not opening up a political conversation, but I have heard him speak and he's like, I'm looking at all the different ways that we can actually, take a bite out of some things that are actionable now without doing that big, we've called it so many things over the years, code next, land development, rezone, rewrite. We haven't solved that big draft, but there are small ways, and I think creating opportunities for ADUs and tiny homes and studio spaces in already existing lots is going to provide a lot of new opportunities in our region.
Well, this has been fabulous. This has been an eye-opening conversation that we've had. And thank you, Mark, for all of the insight and education that you brought to the table. Are you curious about navigating the changing real estate scene or need tailored insights? Ready to ask your burning questions? We're here to help. Tell us what's on your mind.
So friends, message us. Our email is easy. It's realtors@holisticreg.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Audible. And we always say, help your neighbors stay informed. So share and educate with them. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
We'll continue to have our holistic neighbors and friends visit with you on a regular basis, but onward we go, my friends.
Yes, let's do it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.